Welcome to Betrayal Affairs. In today's video, I never imagined I would one day become the kind of woman who stepped across a line she swore she would never even approach. For years, I thought of myself as steady, dependable, grounded, the sort of person who could listen to stories of infidelity, shake my head, and mutter something like, "That could never be me." I told myself those things only happened in marriages that were already falling apart, to people who were miserable, neglected, or reckless. But the truth is, life has a way of humbling you when you least expect it. Sometimes temptation doesn't knock on your door when you're desperate or broken. Sometimes it finds you in the middle of what looks, from the outside, like a perfectly ordinary and stable life. That's where my story begins. I had been married for nearly 8 years. My husband, Adam, is the kind of man most people would describe as steady, the type of husband who never forgets to change the oil, who sets the alarm every night, who folds the laundry with neat, even corners. He's kind, he's reliable, and for the longest time I thought that was all I would ever need. And then there was Daniel. I had been working at the same marketing firm for 6 years, climbing slowly but surely, carving out a space for myself in a competitive field. Daniel, my boss, was one of those people you notice instantly when they walk into a room. Charismatic without trying too hard, sharp but approachable, the kind of leader who made you feel like you wanted to impress him, not because you had to, but because you wanted his approval. He was good at drawing people in, at making a conference room feel like a stage where he was both director and actor. But for years, our relationship was professional. Strictly professional. The change didn't happen in one dramatic sweep. It crept in quietly, in ways so subtle I almost didn't notice. A longer smile after a meeting. A casual question about my weekend where he lingered for the answer instead of moving on to the next task. Jokes we shared that no one else in the office seemed to catch. Those little threads wove themselves into something I kept telling myself was harmless. After all, I was married. He was married. We were both adults who knew the boundaries, or at least I thought we did. The real shift began during a particularly demanding project. We were trying to land a client whose account could elevate the entire firm. That meant late nights, endless revisions, strategy meetings that blurred into exhaustion. The office after hours felt like a different world. The usual hum of phones and chatter was gone. Instead, there was a quiet intimacy to the space, the glow of desk lamps, the echo of footsteps in empty hallways, the soft sound of keyboards clicking in the dark. One night, as we sat side by side reviewing slides, for what felt like the 100th time, our hands brushed when we both reached for the same pen. It should have been nothing, a passing moment that didn't deserve a second thought. But my stomach flipped in a way that made me uneasy. I went home that night and lay awake, replaying that insignificant moment as if it had meaning. I told myself it was just stress, adrenaline, exhaustion. But the truth is, something had shifted and I could feel it. In the days that followed, I started noticing him differently. The way his voice softened when he was tired. The way he leaned casually on my desk in the mornings, coffee in hand, as though my space was as familiar to him as his own. And the unsettling part was this: he noticed me noticing. One evening, after a long and particularly intense meeting, he walked me to my car. The air was crisp, my breath visible in the night, and as I fumbled with my keys, he said quietly, "You're amazing, you know that?" I froze. It sounded like a compliment, the kind of thing a boss might say to a hardworking employee, except it didn't feel that way. The way his voice dipped, the way his eyes held mine a little too long, made it clear there was weight behind his words. When he added, "I mean it," something inside me cracked open, like a door I had never wanted to admit even existed. At first, it wasn't physical. It was little messages, a meme, a joke about the office, a casual complaint. But slowly, those conversations turned into late-night confessions. He told me about his marriage, how distant it had become, how he felt unseen in his own home. I told him about mine, not that it was unhappy, but that it had become safe, predictable, almost too familiar. And somewhere along the way, those messages began to feel like stepping into another version of myself. A version that was exciting, desired, alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. The night everything crossed the line is etched into my memory with a clarity I sometimes wish I could erase. We had just finished the final presentation for the client we'd been working toward for weeks. Everyone else had gone home. Daniel pulled out a bottle of wine, a gift from a colleague, and poured us each a glass to celebrate. We laughed, talked, let the tension of weeks of work dissolve into something easier, and then the laughter faded. The silence stretched, long and charged. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, part hesitation, part decision. And when he stepped closer, I didn't step back. I won't give you the details. This isn't a movie scene, and it wasn't some sweeping, passionate romance. It was clumsy, messy, born out of exhaustion, tension, and choices we both knew were wrong. I remember feeling two things at once, completely alive and deeply guilty, like standing too close to the edge of a building and realizing you want to lean just a little further. Afterward, silence hung between us. He sat back at his desk, rubbing his forehead, and I stared at the carpet, my heart racing. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on me, and yet a small, selfish part of me didn't regret it. Not in that moment. The next morning, though, the knot in my stomach was undeniable. I smiled at my husband across the breakfast table, poured coffee into his favorite mug, and felt like a stranger in my own kitchen. I carried the secret inside me like a stone I couldn't put down. Daniel and I went back to pretending at work. Professional, polite, nothing out of the ordinary. But every glance, every accidental touch, carried the memory of what we had done. And in those moments, I felt both ashamed and unwilling to let go of the way he had made me feel. It didn't last. After a few weeks, we both pulled back. He stopped sending messages late at night. I stopped lingering in his doorway. Without saying a word, we both knew it had to end. But the damage had already been done. Not to our careers, not yet, at least. The real damage was inside me. To the way I looked at my marriage, to the way I looked at my marriage, to the way I looked at myself. My husband hadn't changed. He was still kind, still steady, still folding the laundry with neat corners and setting the alarm every night. But I had changed. I had crossed a line I thought I was immune to, and there was no way to uncross it. It's been nearly a year now. Daniel and I still work together. We're polite, professional. We never speak of it. But every once in a while, I catch him looking at me in a way that tells me he remembers too. And I wonder, does he regret it as much as I do? Or does he miss it the way I sometimes do, in those quiet moments when I wish I didn't? If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: temptation never announces itself with flashing lights or sirens. It doesn't storm into your life waving red flags. It arrives softly, disguised as a smile held just a little too long. A message sent at midnight. A kind word on a cold night. And if you're not careful, if you let your guard slip even for a second, it can change everything, and it changed me.